Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining another episode of the Educational Leadership Podcast. We have another very special guest today. We actually have a returning guest. It's been a couple years now, so we'll be interesting to hear some of the updates that have happened at the district. So, before we do introduce our guest, we do want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Ideal Impact. Ideal Impact giving away hundreds of millions of dollars of public education in the form of a free gift, unrestricted funds. So, if your district needs more funding, reach out to Ideal Impact. Okay, today we have Superintendent Estrada from Lockhart ISD. Superintendent Estrada, how you doing today?
Doing well. Thanks for having me back.
Yes, very excited to have you back. And it's been a couple years, and not everyone may have listened to the podcast a couple years ago. So just so they hear a little bit about your background, could you share about a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. So I'm the proud superintendent of Lockhart Independent School District here in Lockhart, just about 25 miles outside of Austin in Central Texas. And we are a growing district. Since the last time I was on the podcast, we probably have another 800 kids or so. So we continue to grow. Our school district's about 7,000 students here in Lockhart. About 75% of our kids qualify for free and reduced lunch, and about 40% of our kids are emergent bilingual students, with about 80% of our students being Hispanic. So we continue to see a lot of growth, as many school districts in Central Texas. Got a lot of active construction going on right now, but a lot of exciting things happening in our community currently.
Yeah, sounds like it. Austin is just booming with all kinds of great things happening. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear more about that. So, what's the primary focus right now in your life with your district growing and the location and all that?
Yeah, I think with compounding our growth, teacher retention, teacher recruitment continues to be a big issue across the state of Texas, across our country. Of course, but that's something that we've been hyper focused on. Since the last time I was on to this time, we've done a number of initiatives to um, one, create the culture and environment where teachers are proud to work in our school district, and proud to work with our leadership team and those types of things. But I think, with our growth, it's an interesting dynamic because the vast majority of our teachers do not live within our district boundaries. So they make a conscious choice to, commute from neighboring communities, to literally drive by a number of schools as they drive to Lockhart to come to work. That's slowly changing as new houses and developments are popping up in Lockhart, where now they have an option. We should just not have the inventory for our staff, and that's kind of slowly changing. We're working with some developers on some teacher housing projects and those types of things that are in the pipeline to make houses more affordable for our teachers, so that they can afford to buy houses through tax credits and some deferred payment options, and a number of different methods. But so we're excited about that. But first and foremost, what we know helps with teacher retention is the campus culture. And when we look at research across the state of Texas, I'm sure you're familiar with the Charles Butt study that comes out every year, and they survey teachers across the state of Texas and figure out why they are leaving. And you really see three big buckets. One is pay. I think that's always a challenge working in Texas with our school funding formula. Pay is one reason. Two is lack of opportunities for growth. Sometimes teachers can feel stifled, and don't see how they can grow in their career. And three is kind of related to that, in that um, teachers often feel like they don't have a voice and autonomy to do the work that they really feel is important. So we've worked really hard to address specifically those three reasons why we see teachers leaving their schools across the state of Texas, and have seen great improvement in all categories of teachers, from our 0 year experienced teacher to our most veteran, 30-year teacher. So that is something I hope we could spend a little time today talking about, diving into some of the things that we've done.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's do it. Let's expand on that. So yeah, let's talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so what we've done first and foremost is really shift the leadership style that we have. Typically public schools can be very hierarchical, and we've really kind of flattened our leadership structure and have more of a what we call a shared leadership model, um, so that teachers do have some voice in decisions that are made that affect them on the day to day. So what we've done, we've invested in teacher leadership positions across the district where teachers will teach half time, but the other half of their day, they are working with small groups of teachers. Sometimes that can look like a grade level. Sometimes it can look like a content area. Sometimes it can look like different leadership teams that are multidisciplinary, where they're working on maybe RTI or something like that. So what we found is that, and then the campus principal is really sharing the decision making with those groups of teacher leaders. So what we found with that is that it's been very successful in um, not only giving teachers more autonomy because they're making those decisions that affect, the curriculum, the instruction, the professional development they receive, all those important decisions that are very personal to teachers, but it's also given us opportunities to compensate those teachers leaders more. It's given us the ability to um, have them feel like they're growing in their career because they don't have to leave the classroom to become an assistant principal. Our teacher leaders, we call them lever leaders. They're essentially making the same as our assistant principals in terms of compensation. Um, so we're able to do that, and through stipends, reward teachers who are really going above and beyond and really sharing the leadership with the campus. We also, as a district, we're in the teacher incentive allotment program through, it's a state program that rewards teachers for performance. So through that mechanism, we're also able to greater compensate teachers. Our models, we believe that by the school year 2028, about a third of our teachers will be making over $100,000. Um, and I think that's our teachers are telling us that that's very important to them because it signals that their expertise is valued, and it's encouraging to them. When we look at pipelines for teachers, we've worked very hard to give teachers at bats in areas, if they want to go and specialize in special education or bilingual education or maybe curriculum writing. Instead of our central office growing those positions, we work with our teachers and pay them that additional money for their time and effort and have them be a part of those processes. And that's been a huge game changer for our school district.
Love it. Like, yeah, it sounds very innovative and kind of outside the box versus some of the other districts we talked to, and it's so needed. Um, how about, with these incentives, as far as funding goes, is that affected at all as far as the incentives go? Like, is there adequate funding for those sorts of things, or?
So we've had to really, when we think of public schools in Texas, we all get our money from the state, and some get a little bit more than others, some get a little bit less, but essentially it's pretty comparable. So what we've had to do is really look and take a hard look at our central office positions. Um, which of those positions are critical? Where can we, instead of having a central office FTE, have that be teacher based, and maybe so that $80,000 we're going to spend at central office. Okay, so can we give, 8 different teachers $10,000 more and still get the efficiencies and tasks done that we would have paid one person to do? So we've done a lot of that to where our central office is probably smaller than most districts. Um, but we're sharing that leadership with our campuses and specifically teachers. So it's proven to be much more effective because the people closest to the work are actually doing the work.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's it. So how did this idea, this structure, was that generated within the district, or is that more of a broader structure through Texas, or?
No, we actually, I did a trip, educational tour to Singapore, about 5 years ago, through the Holdsworth Center. And, studying the Singaporean system and learning how they set up career pathways for teachers, how they compensate the most highly effective teachers, how can their system shares leadership with the highly effective teachers. That's what really got us brainstorming about how we could model and replicate that in many ways within a Texas system that is set up much differently than in Singapore. Everything from their government structure to just the general society is much different, but we really got a lot of ideas and were inspired by how they run their schools in Singapore. I'll never forget there was a teacher in Singapore. I'm talking to them. Their principal was maybe 5 feet from us, and she looks over, looks at her principal. They lock eyes, look at each other. She looks back at me, and she makes a comment and says, "I make more money than my principal." And I was like, wow, that's a kind of a foreign concept to us here, in
Mhm.
the States and in Texas. So we started exploring that because it was not only about compensation, it was also about teacher autonomy and teacher voice and decision making, and then career pathways. So it just all kind of lined up because that's what we were seeing. The Charles Butt study was reporting why teachers were leaving the classroom. So about 5 years ago, we really started. We started at one campus and piloted it, and then campuses actually had to apply to join the shared leadership model. But now we're at 100% of our campuses.
That's so cool. It makes sense though, with if you look at the performance metrics versus the, having its incentives that align with that. Um, yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's very cool. So what's on the horizon for your district? What do you see coming up maybe over the next couple years at the district that's on the radar?
I think, something that is in Lockhart and in most districts, the issues with cell phones and technology. And I see this, we're coming to a crossroads because for the last, you know, I don't know, 15 years, we've been working hard to effectively implement technology as a learning tool and to really capture the promise that technology has. COVID came and forced everyone to go one to one and implement technology at a rapid pace. Now we have AI coming, but we also have this, um, you know, this issue of, is technology actually harming our kids and their social emotional wellness? Are cell phones addictive? Screen time issues. So I think we're having a really tough conversation about what is working in regards to technology and what is not working. Did we go too far in tech implementation? You know, um, is it not only harming our kids from a social emotional aspect? Is it harming their learning as well? And I think that's a there aren't enough people having that conversation. We just assume that all this technology is great and it's a little bit what's the next program that's going to help our kids learn? But we're having a conversation and just you know um, are we capturing all the benefits of it? And then also just, pencil and paper, um, have benefits as well. And are we losing some of those benefits?
That's so interesting that you say that. I've heard from parents, I have three kids, 3, 7, and 11, all girls. And I talked to different parents, and they have really noticed a difference, like, taking technology away, right? And how that changes their attitude and interaction with the parents. It's an interesting thought of how just the broader context of the impact technology's making. Obviously, there's good things about technology, but the other side of it is, how do you manage it? How, and how much, so that's interesting that y'all are looking at that, because it makes perfect sense. And it does seem like some districts are kind of one extreme or the other. Or some are like, there's not a lot of them, but there's someone like, we're kind of old school, right? We book textbooks, not technology, and it works for them, right? And then you have other districts that it's all virtual and technology and all that stuff. So it makes sense that there could be more of a kind of a balanced approach there, uh using it at the right time and right approach. So that's very cool, very interesting.
Yeah.
That would, yep.
And I was just saying, we're gonna have a parents forum and kick off a parent meeting to look at cell phone use. And when I say cell phone, I struggle with that. Really, we're talking about smartphones, iPhones, and Androids, where kids have literally the world in their hand and at all times, and the addictiveness and social media and all the violence and terrible things that kids have access to, the cell phone addiction that kids have. So we're going to be engaging and working with our parents and try to work together to address this issue. That I don't know if you've read The Anxious Generation. A lot of people are reading
My
it. It's
wife
going.
has that book. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so we're doing that book study with our parents starting next month, and we're going to try to create a community around what are best practices that we can have at the school, but then also at home. So we're connecting all those dots.
We're teeing up the next episode. Do you realize that, Superintendent Estrada? We are teeing up the next episode of the podcast. So
Yeah, so it's an important topic for sure.
yeah, that'd be great to have you back on, and we could talk about how things evolve through this process, because it sounds like y'all are on the cutting edge of some of these conversations that are happening. So that's really good. Well, I know we're running short on time. Last question: if you were to have somebody come on the podcast, somebody the first person that comes to your mind in public ed that's a leader in public ed, preferably a superintendent, who would that be?
Oh, wow. I don't know if you talked to Bobby I. He's the first guy. He's the first superintendent that popped in my head. He's just someone who I admire his leadership. We send text messages and things frequently, but he's someone that I really admire and kind of even look up to in many ways, because I just think he's such a great superintendent, a great advocate for public schools, and he's at the top of the list.
It's been a while. He was on probably a couple years ago. So we're up to like 80 episodes now. So we've interviewed so many people. It'd be great to have him back on. So I have to reach out to him. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast and sparing your time. I know you have so much going on, and so I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Anytime. I look forward to following up on how all this technology stuff works out. I'm sure we'll figure out every problem.
Yeah, I'll get them all solved. Um,
Yeah.
well, awesome. So we're going to close out. Before we close out, we do want to give one final shout out to our sponsor, Ideal Impact. Ideal Impact's giving hundreds of millions of dollars of public education, unrestricted funds, higher teacher salaries, whatever your district needs. Reach out to Ideal Impact. And for those that have been tuning in, stay tuned for future episodes of the Educational Leadership Podcast.